The stagecoach rattled into Lade, South Dakota on a blistering August afternoon in 1876, carrying a woman who wore fear like a second skin. Beatrice Kane watched from the ranch supply store's porch as the dust-covered vehicle lurched to a stop outside the Golden Nugget Hotel, his weathered hands pausing mid-motion as he sorted through saddle straps. He had been expecting someone, though the telegram had been frustratingly sparse on details. All he knew was that a Miss Thea Lawson from Boston would arrive on the afternoon stage, answering his advertisement for a practical arrangement that would benefit them both. The door opened, and a woman stepped down with movements so careful they seemed rehearsed, as though she had learned long ago that sudden gestures brought consequences. Bea set down the leather he had been examining and moved toward the hotel, his long legs covering the distance in easy strides. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that fell just past his collar. At 29, he had built a successful cattle operation on land that had cost him every drop of sweat and determination he possessed. But the house remained empty except for himself and his aging housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who had announced last month that she was moving to San Francisco to live with her daughter. Thea stood beside her worn carpetbag, her dark blue dress buttoned high at the throat despite the heat. She was 23, slender, with auburn hair pinned severely back from a face that might have been pretty if it had not been so carefully blank. Her green eyes darted nervously across the street, cataloging exits and dangers with the practiced efficiency of someone who had needed to run before. When Beatrice approached, she took an involuntary step backward, her hands clutching the fabric of her skirt. He stopped several feet away, suddenly aware that something was very wrong. "Miss Lawson." His voice was gentle, pitched low so as not to startle. She nodded once, quick and sharp. "Mr. Kane." "Yes, madam." He started to raise his hand in greeting, a simple wave to acknowledge her, and watched her flinch so violently that she nearly stumbled. Her arm came up defensively, shielding her face, and in that instant Beatrice understood with sickening clarity exactly what kind of life she had fled. He froze, his hand still halfway raised, and very slowly, very deliberately, he lowered it back to his side. The smile he had been wearing faded into something more serious, more careful. "Welcome to Lade," he said quietly. "The hotel has a room ready for you. I thought you might want to rest from your journey before we talked about the arrangements." Thea lowered her arm, her cheeks flushing with shame at her reaction. "I apologize, Mr. Kane. The journey was longer than I expected. I am not usually so. No apologies needed." He gestured toward the hotel but made no move to take her bag or touch her elbow, none of the courtesies he would normally have extended. "Mrs. Patterson runs the hotel. She is a good woman, and she will make sure you have everything you need. I will be at the livery stable across the street whenever you are ready to talk, or I can come back tomorrow if that suits you better." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the surprise flicker across her face. He supposed she had been expecting demands, expectations, perhaps even anger at her skittish response. "Tomorrow would be better if that is acceptable, of course." He tipped his hat, the movement slow and obvious, and walked back toward the supply store without looking back. Behind him, he heard her exhale shakily, as though she had been holding her breath. The Golden Nugget Hotel was cleaner than most frontier establishments, thanks to Maggie Patterson's exacting standards. Thea climbed the stairs to the second floor, where a small but tidy room awaited her. A basin of water sat on the dresser, and the bed was covered with a faded but clean quilt. She set down her bag and sank onto the mattress, her legs suddenly unable to support her. What had she done? She had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to marry a complete stranger, fleeing a situation that had become unbearable. Her brother-in-law, Richard, had become increasingly aggressive after her sister Eleanor's death, 18 months prior. At first, it had been verbal abuse, harsh words about how she was not contributing enough to the household, how she was a burden he had inherited along with his wife's medical debts. Then the words had been accompanied by thrown objects, a shove here and there, finally escalating to a blow that had blackened her eye and convinced her that she needed to leave before something worse happened. The mail-order bride advertisements had seemed like a miracle and a gamble all at once. Beatrice Kane's notice had been straightforward. A rancher seeking a practical woman to manage his household, someone educated enough to help with correspondence and accounts, strong enough for frontier life. He had not promised love or romance, which had actually been a relief. Thea did not want passion. She wanted safety, a roof over her head that did not come with fists and fury. But now, after seeing his face when she flinched, after watching him carefully lower his hand and step back, she wondered if she had traded one prison for another. Men did not like being made to feel like monsters, and her reaction had clearly painted him as one before he had done anything to deserve it. She washed her face in the basin, watching the water turn dusty, and tried to compose herself. Tomorrow she would meet with him, discuss the terms of their arrangement, and see if this desperate gamble would save her, or simply relocate her suffering to the Dakota territory. Sleep came fitfully that night, punctuated by dreams of Richard's red face looming over her, of train wheels clacking endlessly westward, of a cowboy's hand raised in the sunlight while she cowered like a beaten dog. When morning arrived, Thea dressed in her best dress, a green cotton that brought out the color of her eyes and braided her hair into a neat coronet. She forced herself to eat breakfast in the hotel dining room, though the biscuits and gravy sat heavy in her stomach. Other diners glanced at her curiously, but did not approach. Lead was a mining town, rough around the edges, filled with prospectors hoping to strike gold in the Black Hills. Decent women were scarce enough that a new female face drew attention. Beatrice appeared at the hotel at precisely 9 o'clock, visible through the dining room window as he tied his horse to the rail outside. Thea watched him pause, adjusting his hat, squaring his shoulders as though preparing for something difficult. When he entered, he spotted her immediately and approached with those same careful, deliberate movements he had used yesterday. "Miss Lawson, I hope you slept well." "Well enough, thank you." She stood, smoothing her skirts. "Shall we talk?" He nodded toward a corner table, away from the other guests, and waited until she had seated herself before taking his own chair. He sat at an angle, she noticed, not directly across from her, and kept his hands visible on the table, palms down, fingers relaxed. "I suppose we should be honest with each other," he began, his blue eyes steady on hers. "My advertisement was not particularly detailed, and your response was brief as well. So let me tell you what I am looking for, and then you can decide if this arrangement will work for you." Thea nodded, her hands twisted together in her lap. "I have a cattle ranch about 5 miles outside of town. It is not fancy, but it is profitable. The house is solid, 2 stories, 4 bedrooms. I have been managing on my own since my housekeeper left, but I am not much good at cooking or keeping things organized. I need someone to run the household, help with the accounts since my handwriting is terrible, and perhaps in time, provide companionship." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I am not looking for a servant, Miss Lawson. I am looking for a partner, someone who can make that house into a home. In return, I can offer you security, a roof over your head, and my protection. Whatever you are running from, it will not reach you here." Her throat tightened. You assume I am running from something. I know you are." His voice was gentle but firm. "I have seen enough fear to recognize it. What I need to know is whether you are running from the law or from someone who hurt you. If it is the law, I cannot help you. If it is someone who hurt you, then you have my word that I will stand between you and them, no matter what comes." The tears came before she could stop them, hot and shameful, spilling down her cheeks. She turned her face away, humiliated by her weakness, but his next words stopped her. "It is all right to cry. You are safe here." She fumbled for a handkerchief, pressing it to her eyes. "My brother-in-law," she managed. "After my sister died. He was angry all the time and I had nowhere else to go. No other family, no money of my own. When I saw your advertisement, it seemed like Providence." Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. "Did he follow you?" "I do not think so. He would have to care enough to chase me, and mostly he just wanted me gone. But he kept my sister's jewelry, everything that should have been mine. Said I had not earned it. Then he is a coward and a thief, and if he does show up here, he will learn what it means to face someone who can fight back." The edge in Beatrice's voice was hard as iron, but when he continued, his tone softened. "I want to be clear about something, Miss Lawson. I will never raise my hand to you in anger. Not ever. Not if you burn dinner, not if you make a mistake with the accounts, not if you decide tomorrow that you hate ranch life and want to leave. You have my word on that." She met his eyes, searching for the lie, the hidden catch. But all she saw was steady sincerity, the kind of honest directness that seemed foreign after years of Richard's manipulations. "Why did you place the advertisement?" she asked. "Surely there are women here in Lead who would be glad to marry a successful rancher." He smiled ruefully. "Not as many as you would think. Most of the women here are either already spoken for, working in the saloons, which I am not comfortable with, or they have made it clear they want to move back east as soon as they can. I need someone who is willing to build a life here, not just endure one. And truthfully, I am not much good at courting. I thought a practical arrangement would be simpler." "Simpler," she repeated and felt a hysterical laugh bubble up. "I suppose honesty is simpler than romance. You want romance." The question was curious, not mocking. She considered it. "I do not know. I have never had it, but I know I want respect. I want to be seen as a person, not property." "Then we have common ground." He leaned back slightly, giving her space. "Here is what I propose. You come out to the ranch, see the place, meet Mrs. Chen before she leaves next week. If you think you can live there, if you think we can work together, then we will go to the preacher and make it official. If not, I will pay for your room here at the hotel for as long as you need to figure out your next step. No obligations." It was more generous than she had expected, more than she felt she deserved. "You would do that? Even if I decide not to marry you, I would. You took a risk coming all this way. The least I can do is make sure you have options." She took a shaky breath, feeling something unknot in her chest. "Then I would like to see the ranch." He smiled, a real smile this time, and it transformed his face from weathered and serious to something warmer. "I will bring the wagon around. It is a bit of a ride, so you might want to bring a bonnet. The sun is fierce this time of year." The journey to the Kane ranch took them through rolling hills dotted with pine and spruce, the landscape rugged and beautiful in a way that made Thea's breath catch. She had grown up in Boston, surrounded by brick and cobblestone, factory smoke and crowded streets. This vast open space felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying. Beatrice drove the wagon with easy competence, his hands steady on the reins. He pointed out landmarks as they went. The creek where the cattle drank, the stand of trees where he had built a small line shack for winter storms, the ridge where deer gathered at dawn. He spoke with obvious love for the land, his voice animated in a way it had not been in the hotel. "How long have you had the ranch?" Thea asked, clutching the wagon seat as they bounced over a rough patch. 5 years. I worked as a ranch hand for nearly a decade before that, saving every penny. When the land office opened up parcels in this area, I bought everything I could afford and took out a loan for the rest. Spent the first 2 years barely sleeping, building the house and the barn, buying starter stock. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, but it is mine. Nobody can take it from me. She heard the echo of her own desperation in his words, the need for something solid and permanent. Your family did not help, his jaw tightened. My father drank himself to death when I was 16. My mother remarried and moved to Ohio. We do not talk anymore. Her new husband made it clear I was not welcome. So they were both orphans of a sort, both seeking to build something stable from the wreckage of their pasts. Thea felt a kinship with this careful cowboy, who spoke of cattle and land with more affection than most men spoke of their wives. The ranch house came into view as they crested a final hill, and Thea could not suppress a small gasp. It was beautiful in a simple, honest way. 2 stories of solid timber, with a wide porch and real glass windows. A barn stood nearby, painted red with a corral attached. Chickens scratched in the yard, and she could see rows of what looked like a vegetable garden behind the house. "Mrs. Chen planted the garden," Beatrice said, following her gaze. "She has been trying to teach me which plants are which, but I keep mixing them up. Last week I pulled up all the carrots thinking they were weeds." Despite herself, Thea laughed. It was a rusty sound, unpracticed but genuine. "I am reasonably good with gardens. My sister and I used to tend one for the household. Then you are already more useful than me." He helped her down from the wagon, careful not to touch her more than necessary, his hand offering support but not demanding it. Mrs. Chen appeared on the porch, a small, round woman with graying hair and a warm smile. "You must be Miss Lawson. Come in, come in. I have tea ready and biscuits. You must be hungry from the journey." The house was even better inside than out. The main room held a large stone fireplace, comfortable furniture that showed wear but not neglect, and shelves lined with books. A large table dominated the kitchen area, and Thea could see through to a pantry stocked with provisions. Stairs led to the second floor, where Beatrice explained there were 4 bedrooms, though only one was currently furnished. Mrs. Chen served tea and proceeded to give Thea a thorough tour, pointing out where things were kept, how the stove worked, which floorboards creaked. "Mr. Kane is a good man," she said, her English accented but clear. "Very respectful, very fair. He never once raised his voice to me in 3 years. You will be happy here, I think." Beatrice had stayed outside, seeing to the horses, giving them space to talk. Thea appreciated the consideration, the way he seemed to instinctively understand that she needed room to breathe. "Can I ask you something?" Thea said as Mrs. Chen showed her the pantry. "Of course, dear." "Why are you leaving if he is such a good employer?" Mrs. Chen's face softened with affection. "My daughter in San Francisco just had her first baby. My grandson. I am getting old and I want to spend my remaining years with family." Mr. Kane understood immediately, even gave me extra money for the journey. "He is lonely, I think, in this big house. He needs someone to share it with." Thea ran her hand along the smooth wood of the counter, imagining herself working here, cooking meals, keeping house. It was not so different from what she had done for Richard, except here it would be her choice, her domain. And Beatrice had promised respect, had demonstrated it already in a dozen small ways. When they returned to the main room, Beatrice had come back inside and was adding wood to the fire, even though the day was warm. "Habit," he said sheepishly when he saw her watching. "Mrs. Chen likes the house warm." "I leave you two to talk," Mrs. Chen announced. I have packing to do." She patted Thea's hand as she passed. "He is a good man. Give him a chance." Alone with Beatrice, Thea felt her nervousness return, but it was different now, less about fear and more about the enormity of the decision before her. "It is a beautiful home. It could be yours too." He stood across the room, hands in his pockets, giving her space. "I know this is sudden, and I know you do not know me yet, but I promise I will do my best to be a good husband to you. I will provide for you, protect you, and treat you with respect. In time, if we are fortunate, maybe we can build something more than a practical arrangement. Maybe we can build a real partnership." She thought of the alternative. Returning to Boston with nothing, trying to find work as a seamstress or a maid, always looking over her shoulder in case Richard came looking. Or staying in Lead, a single woman in a mining town, vulnerable and alone. Or she could stay here in this solid house with this careful man who had learned in the space of one flinch to move slowly around her. "I want to try," she heard herself say. "I want to see if this can work." His smile was like sunrise, slow and warm. "Then we will make it work together." They were married 3 days later in the small church on the edge of Lead, with Mrs. Chen and the preacher's wife as witnesses. Thea wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her alter from one found in the general store, and Beatrice wore his best suit, his hair slicked back, his hands trembling slightly as he slid the ring onto her finger. "I promise to honor you," he said, his voice low and serious. "To protect you and provide for you all the days of my life." When the preacher said he could kiss his bride, Beatrice looked at Thea with a question in his eyes. She nodded, just barely, and he leaned in to brush his lips against hers, feather light, there and gone in an instant. It was the first kiss she had ever received that felt like a gift rather than a taking. They returned to the ranch that afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Kane, and Thea felt the strangeness of it settle over her like an unfamiliar coat. That night, Beatrice showed her to the main bedroom, large and airy with windows overlooking the hills. "This is yours," he said. "I will take the room down the hall. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, you can let me know, but there is no rush. We have time to learn each other." She could have cried at the relief of it, the understanding that he was not going to demand his marital rights immediately. "Thank you," she whispered. "No thanks needed. Sleep well, Thea." It was the first time he had used her given name, and she found she liked the sound of it in his voice, warm and careful. The days that followed developed their own rhythm. Mrs. Chen spent the final week teaching Thea everything she knew about running the household, from how Beatrice liked his coffee to where the linens were kept. Beatrice worked the ranch, rising before dawn to tend the cattle, returning at noon for lunch, heading back out until dark. He was never idle, always fixing something, checking on something, planning for winter. Thea threw herself into learning, determined to prove her worth. She mastered the temperamental stove, figured out the intricacies of the accounts ledger, and spent hours in the garden rescuing Mrs. Chen's vegetables from encroaching weeds. In the evenings, she and Beatrice would sit on the porch, watching the sun set over the hills and talk about small things. How many chickens had laid eggs, whether the fence in the south pasture needed mending, what supplies were needed from town. It was peaceful in a way Thea had never experienced. There were no sudden rages, no walking on eggshells, no dread of what each day might bring. Beatrice moved through the house with deliberate care, announcing himself when he entered a room, keeping his distance, never making sudden movements. She realized he was training her, in a sense, training her nervous system to understand that he was safe. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after Mrs. Chen had departed for San Francisco, Thea was struggling to move a heavy pot of water from the pump to the stove. Beatrice came in from the barn, saw her straining, and moved to help without thinking. She flinched just slightly, and he froze. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I am sorry I did not hear you come in." He stepped back, his face troubled. "No, I am sorry. I should have announced myself." "Here, let me get that for you, but I will come from the other side where you can see me." "All right," she nodded, and he walked around the wide kitchen, approaching from the front, and lifted the pot easily, carrying it to the stove. "You should have called me for this. It is too heavy." "I managed before." "Before, you did not have help. Now you do." He smiled at her, and she felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something that might have been the beginning of trust. They continued their careful dance, two people learning each other's boundaries and needs. Beatrice taught her to ride, patient and encouraging as she struggled to stay in the saddle. She taught him to darn his socks properly, laughing at his clumsy stitches. Small intimacies grew between them, hands brushing as they passed plates at dinner, sitting closer together on the porch swing, comfortable silences that did not need to be filled. A month after the wedding, Thea woke to the sound of shouting from outside. Her heart seized with old fear, and she stumbled from bed, grabbing a shawl. From the window, she could see Beatrice in the yard, facing down three men on horseback. They were rough-looking, armed, and clearly angry about something. She flew down the stairs and out the door before thinking, driven by a terror she did not fully understand. Beatrice was alone against three men, and the old fear of violence, of being helpless, propelled her forward. "There's a problem here," she heard Beatrice say, his voice calm but hard. "Your fence is blocking the creek access," one of the men growled. "We need to water our cattle." "The creek runs through my property. You are welcome to water your cattle at the crossing, same as always, but you are not tearing down my fence. We will see about that." The man reached for something at his belt, and Thea did not think, just reacted. "Stop!" she shouted, running into the yard. "Just stop!" All four men turned to look at her, and Beatrice's face went pale. "Thea, go back inside." "No." She moved to stand beside him, her heart hammering. "If you want to tear down his fence, you will have to go through both of us." The men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting a woman to interfere. The leader spat into the dust. "This is not your concern, madam. He is my husband. That makes it my concern." Beatrice's hand found hers, squeezed gently. "Thea, please." But something had shifted in the confrontation. The men seemed less certain now, less willing to escalate with a woman present. The leader finally shrugged. "We will take it up with the land office. But mark my words, Kane, you cannot fence off water in cattle country." "I am not fencing off water. The crossing is open, always has been. You just want access where it is convenient for you, and that happens to be where my best grazing is. Find another way." The men rode off, grumbling, and Beatrice turned to Thea with a mixture of pride and exasperation. "That was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish." "I could not let them hurt you." His eyes softened. "I can handle trouble, Thea, but thank you for standing with me. It means more than you know." She realized she was still holding his hand and did not let go. "Are they going to come back? Maybe. But now that they know I am not alone, they will think twice. Men like that are bullies. They back down when they meet real resistance." That night, for the first time, Thea knocked on the door of Beatrice's room. He answered in his nightshirt, hair tousled, surprise evident on his face. "I do not want to sleep alone tonight," she said quietly. "I keep thinking about those men. Would it be all right if I stayed here? I do not mean. I just mean to sleep, to not be alone. Of course." He stepped back, gesturing to the bed. "Take the bed, I will take the floor. We can share the bed, we are married. Thea, I trust you." And she realized, saying it, that it was true. Somewhere in the past month, this careful cowboy had earned something she thought she would never give again. They lay side by side in the dark, careful not to touch, but the warmth of another person beside her was comforting in a way Thea had not expected. She fell asleep to the sound of his breathing, steady and even, and slept better than she had in years. In the morning, she woke to find herself curled against his side, his arm draped loosely over her waist. He was still asleep, his face relaxed and younger without the care he usually carried. She studied him in the early light, the lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun, the small scar on his chin, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead. He was not a handsome man in the classical sense, but there was something solid and good about his face, something trustworthy. He stirred, opened his eyes, and immediately started to move his arm. "Sorry, I did not mean to. It is all right." She smiled at him, a real smile. "I do not mind." Something shifted between them then, an acknowledgement of the growing tenderness that had been building through all their careful interactions. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You are very brave, Thea Lawson Kane." "So are you, Beatrice Kane." "Bea," he corrected softly. "My friends call me Bea." "Bea," she repeated, testing it. "I like that." They rose and went about their day, but something had changed. The distance they had carefully maintained was closing, replaced by something warmer, more intimate. Bea found excuses to be near the house more often, helping with tasks Thea could have managed alone. Thea began touching him casually, a hand on his shoulder as she passed, fingers brushing his as she handed him his coffee. Summer deepened into autumn, and the ranch work intensified as they prepared for winter. Bea hired 2 hands to help with the cattle, young men named Johnny and Peter who were respectful and hardworking. Thea cooked for them all, large hearty meals that fueled the long days of work. The house filled with life and laughter, and she began to understand what Bea had meant about building a home. One evening in late September, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, Bea took her hand. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Are you happy here? Truly happy?" She considered the question seriously, looking out over the land that had become familiar, the house that had become home. "I am happier than I have ever been. I did not know life could be like this, peaceful and full at the same time. I feel the same." He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "I know this started as a practical arrangement, but somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you laugh when one of the chickens chases Peter around the yard. I love waking up and knowing you are here. And I need you to know that whether or not you ever feel the same, I will always be grateful you took a chance on me." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could, but I do. You taught me what it means to feel safe, and somewhere in that safety I found room to love." He kissed her then, not the chaste brush of their wedding day, but a real kiss, deep and tender. She melted into it, into him, and felt the last walls around her heart crumble. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Will you come to my room tonight?" he asked. "Not just to sleep, to be my wife in every way." "Yes," she said simply, and meant it with every fiber of her being. That night, they came together with a tenderness that made Thea weep. Bea was endlessly patient, constantly checking to make sure she was comfortable, that she wanted to continue. And when she finally pulled him close and whispered that she was ready, that she wanted all of him, the love that passed between them felt like a benediction, a healing of old wounds. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, she told him about Richard in more detail than she had before. About her sister's slow death from consumption, about the escalating abuse, about the moment she had decided she would rather risk the unknown than stay one more day in that house. He listened, his hand stroking her hair, and when she finished, he kissed her forehead. "He will never touch you again. If he comes looking, he will find me waiting. I do not think he will come. He wanted me gone. Then his loss is my gain." He pulled her closer. "Sleep now, love. You are safe here." Winter came to the Black Hills with fierce cold and heavy snow. Bea and the ranch hands worked tirelessly to keep the cattle safe, often coming back to the house crusted with ice and exhausted. Thea kept the fires burning, hot meals ready, and warm beds prepared. The routine of care became a language of love between them, unspoken but understood. In January, Thea realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be certain, then told Bea one snowy evening as they sat by the fire, "I am going to have a baby." He stared at her, his face cycling through shock, joy, and fear in rapid succession. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. Mrs. Patterson in town says I have all the signs." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby, our baby." Then he pulled back, concern creasing his face. "Are you all right? What do you need? Should you be sitting?" "Do you feel well?" She laughed at his sudden panic. "I am fine. Women have babies all the time, Bea, but yes, we will need to prepare. And I want the doctor in town to check on me regularly. Whatever you need, anything." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. We are going to be your parents, so you had better be prepared for a lot of love and probably some confusion, since neither of us really knows what we are doing." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter and into spring. Thea's body changed, swelling with new life, and Bea treated her like spun glass, constantly hovering and worrying. She finally had to sit him down and explain that she was pregnant, not dying, and needed him to stop treating her like an invalid. "I am sorry," he said, looking sheepish. "I just want to make sure you are safe. You and the baby both. We are safe. But I also need to feel useful. Let me keep doing what I can do. I will tell you when I need help." He agreed, though she caught him watching her constantly, ready to leap to assistance at the slightest sign of distress. In May, when the hills were green and dotted with wildflowers, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and Bea paced outside the bedroom door while the doctor and Mrs. Patterson attended Thea. When the baby's first cry rang out, he burst through the door, ignoring the doctor's protests. Thea lay exhausted but radiant, holding a red-faced, squalling infant. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Bea approached as though walking on holy ground, staring down at the tiny creature in wonder. "He is so small. He is perfect." She handed the baby to him, and Bea cradled the infant with surprising gentleness, his large, work-roughened hands supporting the small head. "What should we name him?" he asked, unable to look away from his son's face. "I was thinking Thomas, after my father." "Thomas Beatrice Kane." "Thomas." Bea tested the name. "Tommy, I like it." He looked up at Thea, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you for him, for everything, for taking a chance on a rough cowboy who did not know how to talk to people." "You knew how to talk to me," she said. "You knew how to move slowly." The baby changed everything and nothing. The house that had been peaceful became louder, punctuated by cries and laughter and the chaos of new parenthood. Bea proved to be a devoted father, changing nappies without complaint, walking the floor with Tommy when he fussed at night, singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. Summer brought more challenges. The men who had confronted Bea about the fence returned with legal papers, claiming rights to water access. Bea hired a lawyer from Deadwood, a sharp-tongued woman named Margaret Cole, who tore apart their claim in front of the territorial judge. The ruling came down in Bea's favor, establishing clear property lines and access rights. The The troublemakers left Leeds shortly after, heading further west, and the threat passed. In the fall, a letter arrived from Boston. Thea's hands shook as she opened it, fearing it was from Richard. But instead it was from a lawyer's office informing her that Richard had died in a factory accident. There was a small amount of money, her sister's remaining estate, which Richard had never legally inherited since he had not completed the probate process. The funds were being released to Thea as the rightful heir. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter, feeling nothing but a distant relief that the shadow hanging over her past was finally, truly gone. Bea found her there an hour later, the letter still in her hands. "What is it?" "He is dead. Richard. He died 6 months ago." Bea pulled up a chair beside her. "How do you feel?" "Relieved." "Is that terrible?" "I do not wish anyone dead, but I am relieved I will never have to look over my shoulder again." "That is not terrible, that is human." He covered her hand with his. "It is over now, really, truly over." She nodded and felt something release in her chest, a tension she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. "There is money. Not a lot, but Alina's estate. We could use it to expand the ranch or save it for Tommy." "That is your money, Thea. You decide what to do with it." She thought for a moment. "I want to use some of it to bring out families. Other women like me who need a new start. We could help them find positions or husbands if they want them, but good men who will treat them with respect. What do you think?" His smile was slow and warm. "I think you are the best person I know." They started small, corresponding with aid societies in Boston and New York, offering to sponsor women who needed to escape difficult situations. Over the next few years, a handful of women made the journey to lead, and Thea made it her mission to ensure they each found safe, stable positions. Some married local men, others found work as teachers or shopkeepers, and a few simply needed temporary shelter before moving on to other destinations. The Kane Ranch became known as a place of refuge, and Thea found deep satisfaction in helping others find the kind of salvation she had found. Tommy grew into a sturdy, curious toddler, trailing after his father around the ranch, his bright laughter a constant soundtrack. When he was 2, Thea became pregnant again, and this time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to do. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1879, a tiny thing with Thea's auburn hair and Bea's blue eyes. They named her Alina after Thea's sister and called her Ellie. The ranch prospered. Bea's careful management and reputation for honesty brought steady profits, and they were able to buy adjacent land, expanding their holdings. They hired more hands, built a larger barn, and added rooms to the house to accommodate their growing family. On a summer evening in 1880, as they sat on the porch watching Tommy chase fireflies while Ellie dozed in Thea's arms, Bea took his wife's hand. "You remember the day you arrived?" he asked. "How frightened you were. How could I forget? I thought I had made the worst mistake of my life." And now, she looked at him, this man who had learned to move slowly for her, who had rebuilt her understanding of what it meant to be cherished. "Now I know I made the best decision I ever could have. You saved me, Bea. You and this place, this life we built." "We saved each other," he corrected gently. "I was dying of loneliness in this house before you came. You made it a home. You made me a family." Tommy ran up onto the porch, his hands cupped around something. "Papa, look, I caught one." Bea leaned down to peer at the firefly glowing in his son's hands. "Very good, Tommy. Now let it go so it can get back to its family." The boy opened his hands, and the insect flew off into the gathering dusk. Tommy watched it go, then climbed into his father's lap, tucking himself against Bea's chest with the easy trust of a loved child. Thea felt her heart swell, looking at her family. The scared, broken woman who had stepped off that stagecoach 4 years ago felt like someone from another lifetime. She had been forged anew in this place, tempered by love and safety and the steady constancy of a good man. "I love you," she said to Bea, to her children, to the life they had built. "I love all of this." "We love you too," Bea replied, and the words were a promise, a benediction, a homecoming. As the stars emerged overhead and the last light faded from the hills, they sat together in perfect contentment, a family born not of blood alone but of choice, courage, and the transformative power of moving slowly enough for broken things to heal. The years continued to roll past with the steady rhythm of ranch life. By 1882, Tommy was 5 and already showing signs of his father's affinity for animals, spending hours following Bea around the barn, learning to care for horses and cattle. Ellie was 3, precocious and fearless, somehow always finding new ways to terrify her parents with her adventurous spirit. Thea had become a fixture in Leeds society, respected for her charity work and her calm, capable manner. She served on the church committee, helped organize the school board, and continued her quiet work helping women in difficult circumstances. The network she had built extended throughout the Black Hills and beyond, and more than once, Bea came home to find a new arrival staying in their guest room, a woman with haunted eyes who needed temporary refuge. He never complained, never questioned. He simply made room at his table, offered work if it was wanted, and treated each woman with the same careful respect he had shown Thea on that first day. Some of the women told Thea that Bea's kindness had restored their faith in men, that seeing how he loved his wife and children had shown them that gentleness in a man was not weakness but strength. In the spring of 1883, Thea discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she was more resigned than excited, knowing the discomfort that lay ahead, but also knowing the joy that would come at the end. Bea was predictably overprotective, and Tommy and Ellie responded to their father's anxiety with their own excitement about having a baby brother or sister. "Can we keep it?" Tommy asked seriously when they told him. "Or does it have to go back like the puppies?" Thea laughed until she cried. "We can keep it, sweetheart. This baby will stay with us forever." Their second son was born in December, during a fierce snowstorm that trapped the doctor in town and forced Mrs. Patterson to deliver the baby with Bea's assistance. The labor was quick, the baby healthy, and when Bea placed the squalling infant in Thea's arms, she felt a surge of fierce gratitude for this life she had been given. They named him James, and he proved to be the calmest of their children, content to watch the world with solemn dark eyes, rarely fussing unless truly distressed. Bea joked that James had inherited his mother's ability to assess situations before reacting, while Tommy had his father's impulsiveness, and Ellie had a wild streak all her own. The house was chaos now, full of children's voices and laughter, toys underfoot, and the constant demands of young ones. But it was a joyful chaos, the kind that filled every corner with life and love. Thea sometimes paused in her work, listening to Tommy reading to Ellie, or Bea singing to James as he rocked him to sleep, and felt overwhelmed by the beauty of the ordinary. One afternoon in the summer of 1885, as Thea worked in the garden while the children played nearby, a rider approached the house. She looked up, shading her eyes, and felt her heart skip when she saw the woman's face. It was Margaret Cole, the lawyer who had helped them years before with the water rights dispute. "Mrs. Kane," Margaret called, dismounting. "I hope I am not intruding." "Not at all. Can I offer you some tea?" They settled on the porch, and Margaret got straight to the point, as was her nature. "I am starting a legal aid society in Deadwood, specifically focused on helping women and children who need protection from violent situations. I wondered if you might be interested in helping. Your name keeps coming up when I talk to women who have been through difficult times. They say you helped them or knew someone who could. I thought we might formalize that work, create a real network. Thea felt a surge of excitement. What would it involve? Fundraising, mostly. Connecting women with resources, safe houses, employment. Perhaps testifying before the territorial legislature about the need for stronger laws protecting families. It is not glamorous work and it can be heartbreaking, but it is important. I want to help, Thea said immediately. Then she paused. But I need to speak with my husband first. This would take time away from the family. Of course. Let me know what you decide. That evening, after the children were in bed, Thea told Bea about Margaret's proposal. She half expected him to object, to say that her place was at home with the children. Instead, he took her hands and looked at her seriously. You know, I support anything that is important to you. If you want to do this work, you should do it. We can hire more help around the house if needed. The children are getting older, and you have always been more than just a wife and mother. You are a force for good in this world, Thea. Do not let anyone, including me, limit that. She kissed him, deeply grateful for his unwavering support. I love you. I love you too. Now, tell me more about this legal aid society. Thea threw herself into the work with Margaret, splitting her time between the ranch and Deadwood. She testified before the territorial legislature twice, pushing for laws that would protect women's property rights and make it easier to leave abusive marriages. She helped establish safe houses in 3 towns, raised funds for legal representation, and counseled dozens of women through the process of escaping dangerous situations. It was hard work, often frustrating, and more than once she came home in tears after hearing a particularly heartbreaking story. But Bea was always there, holding her when she needed to cry, listening when she needed to talk, reminding her that every woman they helped was a victory, no matter how small. The children grew. Tommy turned 11 in 1886, tall for his age and thoughtful, already showing an aptitude for managing the ranch that made Bea's chest swell with pride. Ellie was 8, bright and imaginative, constantly creating elaborate games and stories that she roped her brothers into playing. James was 3, quiet but observant, with a gift for finding trouble in the most unexpected places. That fall, Thea realized she was pregnant again. At 33, she felt too old for another baby, but when the 4th child arrived in the spring of 1887, a daughter with fierce lungs and a head full of black hair, she fell in love all over again. They named her Rose, and she became the baby of the family, doted on by siblings and parents alike. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier than ever but rich with purpose. The ranch continued to thrive under Bea's management, and the Legal Aid Society expanded its reach throughout the Dakota Territory. Thea and Margaret became close friends, bonded by their shared mission and mutual respect. In 1889, South Dakota achieved statehood, and the territory they had helped build became a permanent part of the nation. Thea stood in the crowd during the celebration in Rapid City, holding Rose on her hip, while Bea kept the other children corralled, and felt a profound sense of belonging. This was her home, truly and completely, in a way Boston had never been. The 1890s brought new challenges and joys. Tommy married a local girl, Sarah, when he was 19, and they built a small house on Kane land, starting their own life while still helping with the ranch. Ellie announced at 15 that she wanted to be a teacher and enrolled in the normal school in Rapid City. James, at 10, had developed a passion for horses and spent every spare moment working with them. Rose, at 7, was showing signs of following her mother into advocacy work. already organizing her schoolmates to help a family whose house had burned down. In 1897, as Thea and Bea celebrated their 21st wedding anniversary, they sat on the same porch where they had courted all those years ago, their hair now streaked with gray, their hands worn by work, but still reaching for each other. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not answered my advertisement?" Bea asked. Thea considered it. "Sometimes, but I cannot imagine it, really. This life, this family, it is all so deeply woven into who I am now. That scared girl who stepped off the stage, coach, she is part of me, but also someone else entirely." "You were never just scared," Bea said thoughtfully. "You were brave. It takes courage to run toward the unknown rather than stay with the familiar, even when the familiar is terrible. You made it safe to be brave. You taught me that not all men are dangerous, that strength can be gentle." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart. In the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, Tommy and Sarah's 3 children who visited often. The ranch that Bea had built alone now supported multiple families, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "I would do it all again," Thea said quietly. "Every hard moment, every fear, every challenge, all of it to get here." "So would I," Bea agreed. "Loving you has been the great adventure of my life." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the black hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The mail-order bride and the careful cowboy, who had found in each other not just safety and partnership, but a love that had transformed them both. Years continued to pass, each one adding new chapters to their story. Ellie became a beloved teacher, eventually opening her own school in Lead. James took over much of the day-to-day ranch management, allowing Bea to slow down as his joints grew stiff and his energy waned. Rose went to college in Rapid City and returned with a law degree, joining Margaret's practice and continuing the advocacy work her mother had started. In 1905, as Thea and Bea celebrated their 29th anniversary, they gathered the entire family for a photograph on the ranch house porch. 4 children, 3 spouses, 8 grandchildren, and the 2 of them in the center, hands clasped, smiles genuine. The photographer captured them there, frozen in a moment of pure happiness, a testament to what could grow from the seeds of courage and compassion. That night, alone in their room, Bea turned to Thea with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something." Her heart clenched with worry. "What is it?" "I've been feeling tired lately, more than usual. I went to the doctor last week and he says my heart is not as strong as it should be. He does not think I have a lot of time left." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. How long? Maybe a year. Maybe 2. There is no way to know for certain. She felt tears streaming down her face. No, we have more time. We are supposed to have more time." He pulled her into his arms and she clung to him, this man who had been her salvation, her partner, her truest love. "Whatever time we have, we will make it count. And when I am gone, I need you to promise me you will keep living. Keep doing your work, keep loving our family. Do not let grief consume you." "How can I promise that? You are my heart. And you are mine, which is why I know you will survive." "You are the strongest person I have ever known, Thea. You survived terrible things before you met me, and you will survive this too." They held each other through the night, and in the days that followed, they made the most of every moment. Bea taught James and Tommy everything he knew about the ranch, spent hours with each grandchild, and wrote letters to each family member to be opened after his death. He lasted 18 months, long enough to see the spring one more time, to watch the hills turn green and the wildflowers bloom. On a warm May afternoon in 1906, with Thea holding his hand and the whole family gathered around, Beatrice Kane closed his eyes and slipped peacefully away. The grief was crushing, a physical weight that made it hard for Thea to breathe. She moved through the funeral in a daze, accepted condolences mechanically, and returned to the ranch house that now felt impossibly empty. But true to her promise, she did not let the grief consume her. She leaned on her children, threw herself into her work with the Legal Aid Society, and slowly, painfully, learned to live with the loss. She would sit on the porch in the evenings, in the spot where they had courted and loved and grown old together, and talk to him. She told him about the grandchildren's accomplishments, about the new laws they had managed to pass, about how much she missed him. And sometimes, when the wind rustled through the pines just right, she could almost believe he was there beside her, listening. In 1915, at the age of 62, Thea published a memoir about her experiences as a mail-order bride and her subsequent work helping other women. The book became unexpectedly popular, sparking conversations about women's rights and domestic violence throughout the country. She received letters from women across the nation, thanking her for sharing her story, for showing that it was possible to escape and rebuild. She lived to see her great-grandchildren born, to witness women gaining the right to vote, to watch the ranch her husband had built continue to prosper under their children's management. She remained active in legal advocacy work until her health began to fail in her early 70s, finally stepping back at the insistence of Rose, who had taken over most of the leadership responsibilities. On a quiet morning in November of 1922, at the age of 69, Thea Kane died peacefully in her sleep in the house that had been her sanctuary for 46 years. Her children and grandchildren gathered for the funeral, sharing stories of her courage, her kindness, and her unwavering commitment to helping others. They buried her beside Bea on a hillside overlooking the ranch, beneath a large pine tree that provided shade in summer and shelter in winter. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and a single inscription that Rose had chosen. They moved slowly and built something beautiful. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to the life that Bea and Thea had created together. The work they had started, helping women escape dangerous situations, continued through the Legal Aid Society that bore Thea's name. And the story of the mail-order bride who flinched when her cowboy raised his hand to wave, and the gentle man who learned to move slowly for her sake, became a beloved family legend, passed down through the years as an example of what love could accomplish when paired with patience, respect, and courage. In the end, what had started as a desperate gamble, a frightened woman fleeing to the unknown and a lonely man seeking companionship, had blossomed into something extraordinary. A love that had healed old wounds, built a family, and created a legacy that would endure long after both of them were gone. It was a love that proved that second chances were real, that broken things could be mended, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was move slowly enough for someone else to heal. Their story was not just about survival, but about the transformative power of choosing gentleness in a harsh world and finding in each other not just safety, but home.